Are the Falcons about to pull off a big Trey Hendrickson trade?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So if you do not know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. the iron that sharpens the iron, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 2 decades, formerly at FalFans.com, RIP. Still going strong on this illustrious podcast, and I thank each and every one of you that go strong with me as everydayers. That means you make this podcast your first listen each and every day, and all you have to do to become an everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts and get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So today I'm joined, of course, by Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and we are gearing up to wrap up this week ahead of a big blockbuster week of moves across the NFL, and perhaps there's going to be a big blockbuster trade in the Falcons' horizon. We'll talk about that coming up. But of course, later in the episode, we will be talking about the Drew Dalman dilemma and whether or not the Falcons should fork up the cash to keep him in Atlanta. We'll talk about some of the restricted free agent moves and how that may influence their upcoming free agent plans. But, Jarvis, Falcons may be monitoring. Let's use the correct report. They're monitoring a big fish when it comes to their potential pass rush, according to Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports, not reporting from a Starbucks, but out here talking about the Falcons are monitoring the status of Trey Hendrickson, the Cincinnati Bengals pass rusher that led the NFL in sacks with 17 and a half sacks this past season, as a potential trade option now that the Cincinnati Bengals have finally, after year plus of Trey Hendrickson being like, hey, pay me or trade me, they're finally going, okay, well, Trey, if you think someone else is going to pay you more than what we're offering, then maybe you have the opportunity to trade him. So, Jarvis, when you see this news breaking that the Falcons are monitoring Trey Hendrickson, what's going across your mind?
I get happy. You talking about a guy who finished second in voting in Defensive Player of the Year, first team All-Pro, his first time making All-Pro. And when you think about going back to when he was his Saints days, right? That contract year, I think we had 13 and a half sacks, and the Saints was like, "Nah, man, we ain't we got Cam Jordan, go on about your way." The Bengals did their thing, and that man hasn't had single digits since 2022. Since he became a starter. So 1 year out of the years he's been with, the last year with the Saints and then those years with the Cincinnati Bengals. So I get happy when I hear them potentially monitoring the situation, right? Because, we had a conversation yesterday about on Locked On Sports Atlanta about potentially looking at Joey Bosa. This has been the guy that been often injured, right? Like there'll be a big chance, and we don't know if he'll fit into the Falcon ethos. You know what I'm saying? Like that's an aspect that you have to take in consideration as well. He's a free agent. You don't have to trade for him. So it was just like he kind of weighing things out. But when I hear that the Falcons are monitoring the situation, and I did say in that conversation when we talking about Joey Bosa is the type of player that the Falcons should be looking at. And I think Trey Hendrickson more than fits the bill when it comes to the type of player that the Falcons need to be taking a look at. And I know people are saying that, they don't have that much draft conversation, but like once you got to take a look at this thing, right? Man, only got 1 year left on his contract. And we saw what Deebo Samuel went for. When he had 1 year left on this deal, and essentially they're going to have to figure out how they're going to pay him, or a contract is probably going to get worked out at some point with him. And for the Falcons, they're going to have to figure it out, right? I'm not saying they're going to be a 5th round pick, but the compensation is going to be in that realm. You're not talking about a 1st round pick. That's not going to happen. 2nd round pick either, I don't think. So when you think about monitoring that situation, what the Falcons need, this is what the Falcons need. And if Terry can figure out a way to get it done, which I feel like he does at least have that type of move in him. I think he has one move like that in him because Terry is good for that in free agency. I'll rock with Terry on the free agency side, right? Versus the draft side. So if they're monitoring that situation, that means that I feel like Terry probably going to get ready to go for it, depending on what the other teams or suitors are willing to offer. And that's the only thing I feel that'll kind of brought him out. If other teams saying, hey, man, we'll give you a 3rd round pick in this year's draft. And Terry going to be like, oh, get it up for Matthew Judon.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jarvis, that you bring up because we've been down this road before with the Falcons trying to get a pass rusher, Montez Sweat 2 years ago, where the Falcons were reported to offering a 3rd, and then Chicago was like, what about that 2nd, though? And then Washington was like, we'll take the 2nd. And so that's, I think, the thing that is keeping me calm, right, when it comes to this news with Trey Hendrickson, just because there's probably going to be a lot of teams that are interested in the NFL's leading sack guy, the guy that's top 3, that when you look at who's had the most sacks the last 2-3 seasons, it's Myles Garrett, it's TJ Watt, it's Trey Hendrickson, right? The AFC North, man, they just been cooking pass rushers. No one wants to play quarterback in the AFC North, right? When you think about Trey Hendrickson, he's up there in age. He's approaching that age where we talk about pass rushers 31, 32 starting to fall off. We saw that with Matthew Judon this year. So there's risk involved with Trey Hendrickson and paying him the type of money. Now you see Max Crosby getting $35 million, Nick Bosa getting $35 million. I think Trey probably not pushing that much, but he probably wants to get in the 30s, certainly. And so that's a lot of money to be paying for a guy that, might start to dip in a year or 2 or whatever. But I sit here and I go, look, man, the Falcons need a guy that can go out there and get after the quarterback. And if you're worried about, well, he's going to be the only guy in Atlanta.
2027, he might fall off.
Yeah.
Terry ain't got that time, that kind of time, dog.
Yeah. Terry should not be worried about 2027. So I think with Trey Hendrickson, he was a one-man wrecking crew for that Bengals. Like they had Sam Hubbard fell off. BJ Hill wasn't that guy. They lost DJ Reader. Everybody knew you had to block that guy. You had to double team. You had to slide your protections to him. And he still got 17 and a half sacks this year, guys. And so that is the type of player that if you're going to spin big, whether you're throwing a 4th this year and a conditional pick next year, and then dropping that $30 million contract with however many guarantees on it that Trey Hendrickson's looking to sort of cash out to close out his career, I think he's the type of player that's worth it. But I gotta stay grounded, Jarvis, because again, as we said, like other teams can swoop in and be like, well, they're offering a 4th and a 3rd. How about that 2nd though? You want that, and then Cincinnati's going to be like, well, sorry, Terry, but we got to do what we got to do. But we'll see.
No doubt. So you know where I'm going now. All right, so we talked about this a little bit with, Drew Dahlman and, on Locked On Sports Atlanta, on Atlanta Football Party, about overpaying for a guy like Drew. There's going to be consequences for that, or there's going to be a domino effect, or, how you kind of refer to it is, if the Falcons get into that conversation about Trey Hendrickson, would you be okay if they cut Grady Jarrett to get it done?
Would I be okay? No, I would not be okay, because I'm just like, you finally got the help that Grady Jarrett needed, and you got it. That's despicable behavior, So I would not be okay with that, Jarvis. But I understand, it's one of those situations where, like, I get it, like I'm not going to sit here and be like, how this is the, as you said, there are consequences and repercussions to making this type of move. But boy, I would just love to have just one season of Grady. One season, just can we figure it out with Grady? Just one season, so that Grady can be like, oh, just send this man out in style. That's all I ask for, man.
Convert some of this salary to a signing bonus. You know what I'm saying? Spread it out. Give me a
work. However you need to do it with the funny money, whatever you got to do.
Oh, that funny money, bro. Oh man, and that's the thing that I feel that Grady deserves. As much as I bring it up, I know people feel like I bring it up a lot, like, oh, Jarvis wants to cut Grady. No, I don't. I don't want to cut Grady. But at some point, you have to start building something tangible on the defensive side of the football. You haven't done that. You've been doing quick fixes, and I think that, Trey, for what the Falcons want to do, they want to make the playoffs in 2025. That's the goal. They have to make the playoffs in 2025 from my point of view. So a guy that's 30, right at 30, right? Like you said, he might have 1 or 2 years of really good production. Shoot, man. Yeah, that's worth $26 million a year. So I feel this is something that the Falcons need to move towards. They're monitoring it. That makes me happy. All right, cool. I'm good with that. But man, if they have to cut Grady, oh gosh, I will be sad. I will be sad. I would be sad, but man, I'll be so happy that Trey is in the building.
It's mixed feelings because it's like we've been here for 7 years being like, man, can we get Grady some help? And then the Falcons get Grady some help, and like, well, Grady, it's not you that we're helping, it's Ruka Roro that we're going to be wind up helping. And it's like, all right, man, I'm going to feel some type of way about it, but at the same time, if Trey Hendrickson, gets 16 sacks, I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be okay. So,
can you imagine that? Oh, can you just imagine that? I was looking at some interesting numbers the other day. So I was looking at when Chuck Smith came in and when Patrick Kearney, got drafted. Both of them, they got drafted. And the first 2 years that they were in the league, both of them had a combined 5 sacks each, for those years. And then they started dropping the double-digit sacks on you. I was like, man. And it just really kind of put it in perspective. It was like, all right, there is a scenario where you draft a guy at 15 and he might not be that productive in the first year. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't count on him to be that productive. Like special dudes, true enough. Yeah, special dudes come in, they're super productive in the first year. And they can be productive without getting so many sacks, right? So you can just being from a TFL standpoint, just being disruptive and just getting a lot of pressures and all that stuff. So like they need a veteran guy that you can count on coming off the edge. That's how you rebuild this thing up. That's why I feel like Trey would be a perfect fit for that. So yeah, even the best pass rushers that we've seen don a Falcons uniform, it took some time for those guys to kind of get acclimated to the next level. So yeah, you don't want your first round pick because we know for a fact that they're going to draft an edge rusher. 1,000% is going down. So yeah, you got to get a veteran guy to kind of help bring them along in that process.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jarvis. You look at the defensive rookie of the year, Jared Verse, right? Yeah. Had almost a historic number of pressures this past season, but only 4.5 sacks. Yeah. So as you say, you can be disruptive, but you may not get that sort of sack production. And we know this fan base, everybody. We're starving for sacks. So it's one of those things. Trey Hendrickson,
bro.
Yeah, produces it. And we'll see. We'll keep it monitored, guys, as the Falcons are monitoring Trey Hendrickson all weekend long, see if a deal gets worked out. Obviously, any trades that happen this week and this weekend won't become official until Wednesday. So lots of moving parts on that. When it comes to Trey Hendrickson trade talk,